Hi hobby friends. Nothing cheers up a burnt out hobbyist like a lovely, silly orc. This week, we're taking a break from the hardcore theory and speed painting videos, and we're going to take a minute to just sit back, relax, and enjoy some painting. Don't get me wrong, I really love to speed paint and to get into the theory weeds, but if you're commission painting and making YouTube videos about painting like me all the time, then it can be easy to lose sight of the real joy of painting. I mean the in-the-moment, flow state, happy place. Of course, there will be some theories and tips along the way, so stick around for that. By the way, flow state apparently only happens when you are right in the borderlands between what you can do confidently and what you're still trying to get good at. Easy enough that you're not getting frustrated, but hard enough that the task is holding your attention. Now, I love my airbrush to bits and pieces, but I just don't feel like it's a very zen-inducing tool. So, pop a party popper, airbrushless friends, because we are free of compressors and precision Japanese engineering this week. It's all about the brushwork. It's been a while since I did a brush-only model though, and man did I forget what a pain it is to lay in base layers. I've not made my life much easier either. I've chosen the infamously transparent portion of the pigment spectrum, yellow. And for some reason, I've decided to try and get this paint to cover over a straight black primer. Foolishness aside, I am porting over one concept from my typical airbrushing approach. We're blasting the boundary between so-called base coats and shading here. I've laid out my main skin tone colours on the palette and I'm picking them, mixing them and generally freestyling a broad strokes idea of where my light and shadow will go. It's messy and unrefined, but it is laying in a good, strong idea of where our lighting is going to be. But why yellow, you might be asking? Am I up to more daft underpainting tricks? No. Today, our orc is orange. Traditional, it is not, but it certainly is what I'm in the mood for. I've been feeling the orange-magenta combo for a while now, and it's time to get something other than armor plating painted up in these colors. Let's get some pink on there now, in fact. The main way I'm enjoying combining these colors is to use the magenta as a shading color for the yellow, either glazed into the shadows, as I'll do on this boy later, or as part of an underpaint sequence like you might have seen me do on the 6mm Eldar models. But right now, what I really want is the eye-watering clash that yellow and pink can produce. There's something about these two colors so different, but also both super intense and tangy, that means placing them together really screams, like putting vinegar on lemons. Most of the time that would be pretty unappealing, but this is a weird boy, friends. He's meant to be, well, weird, intense, crazy, and that's a pretty important part of a colorist's job, isn't it? Representing character through tone. I also want this bad boy to be nice and motley. Orcs are a motley bunch at the best of times, but weird boys, who I imagine spend most of their time hanging around on the outskirts of settlements, or frankly being chased there by their brethren, surely must be extra variegated. They have no access to the big piles of loot and no hope of matching their loincloth with their pauldrons. I don't have loads of cloth to work with here, so it has to be a big chromatic jump between each piece. Blue then, to contrast our nice pink round the front there. Blue is also a heavier, cooler colour, so it'll work nicely as the backdrop to the main angle on the Mini. Okay, while we wait for these layers on the cloth to dry, let's glaze in some magenta like I said I would. What happens here is the magenta works to pull the yellow and orange round the colour wheel into deep reddish tones, giving us lovely rich shadows. It's a little bit of colour theory alchemy that leaves you with more than the sum of your parts. Sure, you could probably find a pre-mixed orange that is similar to the colour you end up with, but I'm telling you, mixing with glazes over bases on the model leaves you with something a little extra. As has become tradition on the channel, I forgot to hit the record button when I was painting probably one of the more interesting parts of the Mini, the shiny pauldrons. But honestly, everything you need to know is there, recorded on the model in paint, so to speak. Paint it dark grey, then with successively lighter and lighter shades of grey and over progressively smaller and smaller areas, add a bar of streaky lines. What really sells the effect though is what comes later. For now, I want to fix this cloth though. I tried adding a blue striped pattern to up the visual complexity, but I wasn't happy with it, so let's try something a little different. After blocking out the pink again, I added this triangle pattern in white instead. Much more orky. Still space for some more colours on this weirdo though, so let's do that with a nice bit of red on his jagged shoulder decorations. And this is where I got to thinking about character, because when you're happily painting with some tunes on in the background, mercifully disengaged from the wider world, your mind starts to wander. And mine often wanders into wondering about narrative, what or who my little subjects are. How about a name to start us off? Frickrot Noggon sounds good to me. And what about that colour? Well, what if Frickrot was in fact quite convinced he was green? What if anyone who told Frickrot that he wasn't green would, after briefly sensing the crackle of weird boy magic in the air, feel the unpleasant ooze of their own brain leaking out of their ear hole? What if that one time a grot asked a knob why the weirdo was yellow, that grot ended up as the replacement ball for Frickrot's beloved swing ball set? So, hear me out here. What if, just to make sure Frickrot doesn't go nuts and kill them all, the rest of the orcs in Frickrot's band make sure nothing green ever touches his skin? So long as our mad lad here can't make a direct comparison skin to skin with something else green, he will happily live out his days convinced he is the meanest and bestest colour there is. Well, that might all be complete nonsense, but it's nonsense I like, and it's given me a fun creative constraint to work with. No green on my palette. Let's do that little trick on the chromy pauldrons quickly. And it really is quick. All it is a glaze of earthy brown along the bottom and a medium blue on the top. What we're trying to do here is capture the way a very shiny object will reflect its surroundings. Brown for the ground, blue for the sky. Now, I did this before I made a final decision on what my ground cover would be, so my reflected ground color doesn't really end up making much sense here. But this is such a common way to depict chrome, it's become a sort of shorthand for the material. I think the effect ended up working alright anyway. Alright, obviously with a paint job like this there is loads of back and forth, and I'm a pretty flighty painter at the best of times, but the next major bit to get done was the skull on top of Frick's stick. I know I said no green, but this is a place where we can cheat a little bit. By mixing a bit of blue and yellow and some Payne's grey, more on that paint some other time, I got a nice dark rotten greenish tone to build up my bone from. Bone can start at basically any colour, and so long as you keep adding bits of off-white to the base and layering up, it should look good. To my mind, there is not really an important distinction to be made between light, colour and texture. We're expressing it all with one medium, paint. So again, I'm not doing a base layer, then highlighting it, then adding scratches or whatever. From the get-go, I'm stippling and splodging in my rough bone texture and relying on the semi-transparent nature of acrylics and the many layers I'm using to bring everything together. And he really is coming together now. My patrons rightly chose a nice neutral cool tone for his base, which helps let the gaudy, bright, predominantly warm tones of Frick himself really sing. My patrons, by the way, are fricktastically awesome. They are the folk that make it possible for me to take the time to make videos for you. If you'd like to join these lovely people, check the links below. Now's a good time to get in as well, as we're holding our very first live discussion clinic this month for top tier supporters. It should be a great place to share and learn, and it's all about airbrushing this time. And of course, if you're enjoying the video, it genuinely makes an enormous difference to how many people get to see it if you hit that like button. Okay, I'm going to mention pin lining again, and I'm going to keep mentioning pin lining until every mini in the world has been lovingly lined. It's such a simple way to add an insane amount of oomph to your minis. Take a very dark color, even straight black, take a thin brush and separate your elements. This is what the old base, wash, highlight method is getting at, but doing it properly like this makes your work look pro. These tiny thin shadows between things are going to help your viewers really read all the different elements on the mini and make everything look clean and intentional. Seriously, get lining. Okay, I'll put away the soapbox now and let's sort out these last few bits. I made a late stage decision to change up the helmet. Originally, I was going to go with a sort of copper helmet thing, but it wasn't reading properly against his orange skin, so I employed an old faithful trick. When in doubt, black it out. Just about anything looks good in black, helmets included. The last day of painting now, and an opportunity to run over the complete palette for the whole mini in case anyone is interested. Forming the core of the palette, we have yellow oxide, cadmium-free orange, red oxide, and burnt sienna, all from the Liquitex acrylic gouache range. Some chimera orange and red for a little extra oomph here and there, and that magenta that I mentioned is the Liquitex gouache version of quinacridone magenta. Again from Liquitex, all our blue needs are taken care of with a little ultramarine red shade and Prussian blue hue. The main quote-unquote black I used is Payne's Grey, and of course the obligatory titanium white was on there as well. After hearing about it from Marco Frassoni, I've been giving mixing white a whirl recently too, and once again Marco's turned us onto an absolute banger here. In brief, this is a white that you can add to any paint to up its opacity without changing its saturation much. A tiny splodge of Vallejo black is on there too, just in case I need to block something out, and a late addition was Liquitex Primary Yellow to add a punchy, cool, lemony twist on some parts, like the bells. Not exactly a limited palette, but fairly tight, I'd say. Okay, it really was just fixing and filling in some stuff after that, so let's jump straight into seeing the final thing. There he is, my very own weird boy. What do you think? Did he turn out all right? I'll leave you with some more shots to have a look at, and why don't you tell me what you think of him in the comments down below. Thanks for watching as always, folks, and don't forget to give that like button a little click for me. Cheers.